What's up, guys? If you have an opportunity, click the link in the description. Get your own copy of It's Your Ship. I'm positive when you read it, there'll be takeaways that aren't the same as my own, but regardless, over the next 3 videos or blogs, depending on whether you'd prefer to read or watch, I'll be touching base on the 3 greatest takeaways I had from the notes that I summarized throughout my reading. Now, right off the jump in the beginning of the book, I really liked the 3 questions that were suggested relative to whenever a plan or project unfolds poorly. And the first question of the 3 was to ask yourself whether or not, as a leader, you had articulated your goal clearly. And personally, this has been something I've struggled with for a long time. Naturally, I'm an introvert, and so I don't communicate all that effectively when it comes to what the intent of an action plan is, what the strategy is supposed to lead us towards. Now, I'm a huge fan of imperfect action. I'm all about developing forward momentum and moving. And oftentimes, in my head, I know how I want things to unfold. I can see the vision vividly. I can determine the direction of the dream, of the intent, but I forget to clarify that. And that's often a big mistake. That's often something that can prove to be a hindrance to momentum becoming even greater, or further, for better strategies and systems coming into play, because the reality is, in a leadership position, you are never going to have all of the best options. In fact, very rarely will you have the best ideas. You'll have to build off of the feedback you get from your team as well as customers and consumers. And understanding that, if nobody knows what the hell the goal is, it's going to prove quite challenging for people to come up with ideas that are progressive. And if they think they might have a decent idea, they won't really know whether or not it's worth bringing up, because they're not entirely sure what the direction that's intended is. So this is something that I've become much better at over the past couple of years, clearly defining, hey, this is what we're trying to achieve with these actions. Or hey, if you have ideas that can make this outcome occur more efficiently or effectively, bring them to the table. Only because if you don't identify that end target, nobody really knows what they're aiming for. And the actions that you're taking oftentimes are inefficient because they're not actually eliciting the desired outcome. They're not moving you closer to that end game. Therefore, they're wasted time. And time is money in the world of business. So the second question of the 3 was whether or not you had provided enough time or resources as a leader for your team to succeed with the plan or project. Now, from a small business perspective, the resources aspect could be a challenging hurdle to overcome, whether or not you're a great leader, because sometimes resources require capital. And as a small business or a starting business, oftentimes capital is limited. It's not uncommon for the business owner to be funding everything with their own savings. Now, understanding this, certain resources will require you to assess situations and kind of do a pros and cons list, if you will. For example, if spending $10,000 is going to make you $30,000 in half the time, and all you have is $15,000 at your disposal, it might be well worth your savings to purchase that device that will maybe allow you to make better widgets or make widgets more efficiently, or what may be. Further, things like hiring a coach that can assist your team with developing a skill set that will allow them to bring more value to the marketplace, considering either your product or service, right? It could be a skill set that allows them to offer a higher quality service, or potentially a skill set that allows them to sell the product or service that you already offer, right? Both of those are very useful, but hiring a coach that can teach that to your team costs money. That's a resource that might be challenging for you to avail yourself of. Further, if you consider technology in the sense of automation, automation could make your business run much more smoothly, but it's also going to cost you. So you have to consider, okay, if I'm going to spend this extra $250 a month for this particular software, how much time does that create for me? And with that found time, how much revenue can I now generate? So if that $250 you spend initially frees up 10 hours a week, and that 10 hours a week allows you to make $500 a week, well, now you're in the plus $1,250 a month. And maybe you can leverage that $1,250 a month against another purchase that can then grow your business. Do you see kind of how that happens? So, you know, at the beginning in a small business or in a starting business, it can be very tough, but weighing those pros and cons and determining what resources you should be taking advantage of in order to grow can really help you move forward, where a lot of people just think, oh, that's gonna cost me $250, I don't wanna do it. But where's it going to save you in terms of time and efficiency and money that will allow you to move forward and grow in the future? You got to think about that long game. So as well, when it comes to time, making sure you're giving enough time for a task to be completed, right? Sometimes you have to be a little bit flexible on this, especially if part of your team has never done certain tasks before. You cannot expect perfect execution the whole way through. So if something should in theory take an hour, but someone's never done it, it might very well take them 2 or 3 the first time around. But what's valuable here is whether or not they're becoming more efficient as they go along. The first time it took 3 hours, but then they shaved 15 minutes off the second time. You can see that trend moving in the right direction. By the 4th time, maybe they're down to 2 hours and 4 minutes. So being a little bit patient as a leader and understanding that, okay, they're moving in the right direction, they're moving closer to that hour model that I was hoping for, great. Very positive reinforcement and encouragement towards that efficiency, and being aware that that time will inevitably be met. When it comes to a lot of goals relative to our business model, a lot of them are not really time dependent, they're ongoing. So becoming more efficient with certain approaches and strategies without a doubt, but then recognizing that these are ongoing tasks that we're constantly adding to what we do and determining, okay, if we do this 10 times a day, are we getting the attention that we're looking for? Good. Is that attention purchasing a service? Good. If it's not, maybe we'll just do 5 of those, and now we'll try 5 things over here and see if that gives us the attention we want. But it's very rarely a deadline on May 1st, this has to get done. That's not very common in our industry, personally. The third question was whether or not you provided enough training to your team to successfully execute on the plan or complete the project as desired. And interesting, when it comes to training in this current economy, a lot of people say, well, how do I know what skill set my team requires? And this can be tough because there's a lot of new skills that are required right now that will allow you to excel in the current economy. One of those skill sets is social media and the ability to navigate the internet with a high degree of proficiency. If you have those, you've got an upper hand over a lot of people. Even people with a great service will struggle because they won't know how to reach the end consumer. And that's extremely valuable, having a strategy to get in front of people on a consistent enough basis where you can actually develop rapport. So oftentimes with your team, you'll have to determine where people excel and where they struggle. What are their strengths and what are their weaknesses? How can you double down on their strengths? And then of course, how can you ensure that their weaknesses are not proving a hindrance to the yield that their strengths produce? So for example, nowadays, it's not uncommon for people under the age of 30 to be absolute rock stars on social media and really excel when it comes to engagement and interaction. But you might have a team member who they can rock interaction out of the park, but they can't spell to save their lives. So when it comes time to actually developing rapport with the end consumer, they start to drop the ball because a person doesn't really see them as a professional because they can't put together a coherent sentence via text. And there's a lot of spelling errors and grammatical errors, and they use the wrong words, and they're generally unprofessional. And this might not seem like a big deal until you get in front of a client who wants to purchase a $2,000 service, and they're like, should I really spend my money with this person who can't even apply the most basic of grammar to their messages that they send to me? And they might think twice. They might not, of course, but they definitely could. And you will never find that having quality grammar is a hindrance. Very rarely, I can't think of any situation in which someone's going to be like, damn, that person knows what they're to use. I don't want to work with them. No, no mistakes in that sentence. They're too good. Yeah, too good. What, you think you're better than me? Yeah, I've never heard of that happening. So understanding that you might not want to invest in teaching that individual how to interact on social media because they're already trailblazing and engaging to such a high degree, but you might want to send them for a few grammar lessons. And that, of course, will increase their perceived professionalism in the market, in the social media arena, which will then translate into a lot of that engagement, leading to more sales of your service. So to summarize, if your team is struggling and projects and plans are ending poorly or unfolding poorly, the 3 questions as the leader you might want to ask yourself are whether or not you articulated your goals clearly, whether you provided enough time and resources to complete the desired project or to execute on the desired plan, and 3rd, whether or not you provided enough training, and training that was relative to the plan or project. And it's interesting because you might be humbled by how often you consciously and honestly reflect on those 3 questions and find out that the problem is you.